This full moon could be another big breakthrough in the way we communicate and make connections in our relationships, elevating more of our self-worth and reorienting the way we direct our energy in our relationships, as well as our overall thinking and processing and way of communicating. Let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle, and today's energy update is all about the full moon in Gemini happening on December 4th at 1:15 p.m. Hawaii time. So the first thing I want to mention is that this full moon is going to be happening at the 13th degree of Gemini. So if you have Gemini placements within 5 degrees of the 13th degree in Gemini, this full moon might have a more significant impact on you, as well as those placements in other mutable signs, Pisces, Virgo, and Sagittarius. All right, well, let's get into the full moon, starting with Gemini. Gemini is a mutable sign, it is a masculine sign, and it is an air sign. So, generally, you're going to feel more of a heightened intellectual energy and social chatty energy um, around this time of the full moon. You could be thinking more, you could have more mental chatter, you could be more social, making more connections and networking, having a lot of acquaintances. You could be learning something, reprocessing something. Something is very heightened with our intellectual energy around this time, as well as our social energy. Now, this full moon is occurring in Sagittarius season. The full moon is always in this opposition here between the sun and the moon. And the sun is currently in Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is a fire sign, it's a mutable sign, and it's also a masculine sign. And it's all about us embracing the freedom to explore and pursue our higher goals, a higher meaning, or a higher purpose in our lives. And often it's a very broad energy that embraces an overall philosophy or higher learning or wisdom through our experiences. And it's all about sharing that wisdom, coming into beliefs, ultimate beliefs, a type of worldview that we have that is very broad, that guides us. Sagittarius season can definitely have us tap into our instincts, follow those instincts, and come into opportunities and luck and good fortune, and just overall distill a lot of wisdom from our experiences. However, the full moon acts as a way to balance us out in each season that we're in. In this case, we're balancing out this Sagittarian energy. And so you can ask yourself, where have you been focused more on a broad philosophical perspective instead of being able to pay attention to the details? Where have you been very explorative and learning through experience, but possibly need to learn something through the intellect, studying classes, reading, writing, listening to other people, listening to other perspectives? Where are you acting as more of a teacher when you possibly need to remember to also be a student? You know, where are you possibly stuck in dogma or beliefs or philosophies and forgetting to listen and forgetting to learn from other people and embrace contradictions and dualities? Where are you taking lots of physical action in your life, but possibly needing to remember how important it is to have networking and social interactions and relationships that can support you? And so this full moon is going to help us have a rebalancing in Sagittarius season. Now let's talk about what a full moon is. A full moon is a very heightened energy in a creative cycle. It's where we bring something to fruition, we bring something to culmination, we bring something to completion, or it can illuminate something that we haven't seen. We bring something to consciousness that has been in the subconscious or something that has been hidden. And it can bring a turning point in our story. And this full moon definitely is a significant turning point. It is squaring the north node in Pisces and the south node in Virgo. Now, these nodes are called the nodes of fate. They aim us in the direction of our overall, like the north node aims us in the direction of overall new growth and new development for our soul's rebalancing. And the South Node would represent our gifts and talents and our past, and even karma that we are, releasing, and can represent things that we're leaving behind as well. And so when you have a full moon that is squaring the nodes, one of the first things, especially if you're sensitive to energy, that could occur is that you feel kind of tired around this full moon, even though it's a full moon and it can have an elevated social energy to it, being in Gemini, but can also be kind of energetically like a release or energetically like exhausting simply if you are releasing a lot of energy at this time because it is squaring the south node, which would indicate we are moving away from something. We are releasing something. We are letting something go in order to align with a new direction, in order to align with fated occurrences, fated events in our lives, destiny. And so, although this moon is not an eclipse, it is very eclipsy in that it can mark a very important turning point in your story that helps you realign in the direction that you need to go. It might require that we have a release, whether that's just an energetic release, an internal expansion, an internal release, or it's an actual physical event that takes place in our lives that realigns us in some way. Now, this moon is also in a very wide opposition with Venus in Sagittarius and Mars in Sagittarius. So, Venus and Sagittarius would be our love language and the way we relate to each other and come together. And so, Venus and Sagittarius is very adventurous and freedom loving and explorative and, wants to go on adventures with each other, wants to have experiences with each other, wants to share wisdom and stories and philosophy with each other, right? Whereas Mars in Sagittarius is going to be maybe a little bit impulsive, maybe a little bit more quick to anger, definitely could be very adaptable, instinctual in the way you move energetically, in the way you direct your energy. And it can, you could be instinctual, following your instincts that lead you to more opportunities. It can be a bit chaotic at times because it is a mutable energy, which can have a tendency to be ungrounded in some ways. But it's explorative in that, being explorative can help you seek and find greater meaning, higher wisdom and overall opportunities in your life. Now, with the opposition with these two planets, Venus and Mars, now this is a very wide opposition. It's also an opposition to Juno, the goddess of partnership and marriage, which is also kind of a very relational energy here, right? This could be about how we connect with other people, how we direct our energy in our relationships. And this could be, this full moon could shine a light on how we do that. And if we're doing that in a way that's balanced, with the square to the south node and the north node, the south node in Virgo could be illuminating relational patterns, patterns with our the way we direct our energy in relationships and the way we communicate in relationships, where we've been too critical, perfectionistic, expecting perfection, over analyzing, paying too much attention to detail and not enough attention to listening to someone else's perspective, learning from someone else, showing up in your relationships in a way that is appropriate for whoever you're connecting with. So, for example, let's say you're working with a child, you would not talk to a child, and let's say you have a problem, you wouldn't tell a child your problem the same way you would tell an adult. You would give them an age appropriate explanation of maybe the challenge or problem you're dealing with. Whereas if you're talking to an adult, you would still need to assess that person. And, are they a close friend? Do they need all the details, all the personal details, or are they an acquaintance? And do they just need kind of, a broad update about what's going on with you. And so that's very Gemini to be aware of the other person, to be aware of their perspective, to be aware of what makes you different, to be aware of the way you show up socially that is appropriate for whoever you're interacting with. Now, this does have a shadow side to it. On one side, it can make you very socially intelligent and it can make you socially enlightened. Like you know how to talk to this type of person and you know how to talk to this type of person and you know how to relate to that person and that person. And you can be really great at leveraging and having all kinds of social connections or relationships, right? But if you don't do that consciously and you're not connected to yourself, you can become a little bit too shape-shifty, and that can even go into territory, psychic territory, communication territory that is where there's hidden agendas, where there's manipulation, where there's something that gets suppressed within you, where you have trouble asserting yourself as an individual in your relationships, where you forget to explore your relationships and listen and, be authentic all at the same time. That's a lot to be aware of at once, right? And so, with this square with the south node and the north node, we're releasing those patterns related to being too critical, too perfectionistic, and we're moving towards being more compassionate and forgiving in our communication, being more nonlinear and intuitive in our communication, embracing our psychic senses in our communication, as well as balancing out our need to explore and share versus our need to listen and show up appropriately for each relationship that we're in. So it's a lot to integrate. It's a strong mutable energy. And so, in this full moon, there could be that sense of feeling pulled in a lot of directions at once. And the challenge of feeling ungrounded could be something that we feel around this full moon. So it's going to be important for you to, if you do energy work, to make sure you're really grounded and that, you can work with this full moon and make sure this full moon experience is more grounded for you. Let's get into Mercury. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And so Mercury is going to be in Scorpio at this time. Now, Mercury will be direct. It's still not outside of its shadow period after that Mercury retrograde, which just means that we're still moving through the same degrees that Mercury went retrograde, but Mercury is now direct. And so we're still not quite moving forward into new territory with our communication and overall mental processing and translation and information. Um, we're still kind of wrapping up something that we've um, had to review, but we are moving forward, and Mercury is direct during this full moon. However, Mercury is going to be in Scorpio. Scorpio is a very psychic and deep, intense energy. Having Mercury here makes our thinking more psychic and psychological and strategic, right? And it's going to be, it's going to be in a beautiful trine with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. This is all about our emotional intelligence, how we feel, our emotional sensitivity, and emotional security. Having Jupiter retrograde in this trine would make this more of a reflective energy where we're doing some internal growth and reflection. We're going into internal experiences and internal adventures. We're going into our internal world and going through an expansion and gaining more wisdom and knowledge from that internal reflection, especially around our emotional security in the way we connect with each other and socialize with each other and communicate with each other. And we also have a trine from Mercury to Neptune as well as Saturn. And Saturn is going to be in Pisces, moving direct. Neptune is going to be in Pisces, still retrograde at the 29th degree. Saturn is going to bring more responsibility, commitment, and structure, and just um, sobriety into our communication, like in a supportive way, where, we're having real conversations or we're being realistic in our thinking. We're thinking about our long-term goals, how to create our long-term goals. We are dissolving anything in our communication that's ready to release. I mean, this full moon is in a square with the South Node, and we have a trine from Mercury to Neptune at the 29th degree. This is definitely giving the release of karma. This is kind of like dissolving collective karma around communication and truth and, exposing and revealing the truth and going through a transformation and evolution around our voice and the way we speak and how we, translate the truth. And so on a collective level, we're all going through kind of a dissolving of karma and a rebuilding and re-embodying of how we communicate and how we translate the truth and how we do that not just spiritually, but also intuitively, but also realistically in an embodied, real way. And that's very supportive. I mean, there's this grand trine between Mercury and Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter. But, it definitely looks like an internal release, dissolving around karmic energies that we need to let go of. And so that's why I mentioned that this full moon could be a little bit tiring for some of us, because sometimes when you're releasing and you're having kind of a hard aspect to the South Node, there can be kind of that exhausting feeling as you're letting go of old energies that have been restricting you. So that's a very positive and supportive energy around our communication. So overall, we are going to have a layer around this full moon that feels a bit tense. And we're also going to have a layer in this full moon that also feels like supportive and positive. And then definitely with Mercury here in Scorpio, it's coming into conjunction with Lilith in Scorpio. Now, Lilith is like the dark goddess. She's going to be helping you. It's kind of like an archetype that helps you go deep into the unseen within yourself. It's the things that are hidden within you, the things that have been suppressed within you, the things that are in the subconscious or, yeah, that live in your subconscious. It's the dark, right? Not evil, but like the things that are not conscious yet. And oftentimes those are our wounds, our pains, things that are hidden within us. And Lilith is that kind of feminine energy that can bring about that sacred anger, that sacred rage within us that can be a source of purging what has been suppressed, the energies within us that suppress our voice, that suppress our truth, that suppress how we embody, that help us dissolve what is karmic to dissolve, to help us release perfectionism and move towards more trust and faith in our non-linear adventure and experience. And this can bring up tendencies in communication and our thinking that are hidden, but also, where with the full moon in Gemini, where have where do we have some hidden shadows within us that are either suppressing our communication or that have been, distorting our communication in some way or our thinking or our way of overall relating and directing our energy in our relationships? I mean, is there a level of, having to go find your truth, and embody it more around your relationships. But, with Lilith, it can bring up things that are a bit manipulative sometimes, like where things have been, where you've been manipulated or where you have unintentionally or intentionally, possibly been too shapeshifty around everyone or other people to the point where you've lost your own authenticity. And in that way, that's a type of, losing yourself or an unintentional level of being maybe manipulative. But I just say that to bring it up in case some of you are being exposed to some form of shadow or manipulation. This would be related more to your feminine energy, and this full moon gives us an opportunity to release that, to reclaim your more sovereignty, to reclaim more liberation within you, to come more into self-worth, especially because Lilith is going to be in opposition to Uranus. Uranus is at the 28th degree in Taurus here, and it's retrograde. And, it's technically in an opposition with Mercury too. So we're going to really be able to translate some kind of breakthrough or disruption in our thinking and patterns around our voice, our communication, our translation, our thinking and processing, our perspective. Like that we could be having kind of like a shift in consciousness around this full moon. And yeah, I think it's possible there could be a layer here where we're feeling some agitation or some anger or some frustration around this full moon. Not maybe because it's just collective, but maybe it's also on a personal level, like where we're purging. We need to purge something, and that anger is very sacred in that it helps liberate us internally, and helps us break through patterns. And, having Uranus in Taurus is all about your attachments to material possessions, your material comforts, your financial security, as well as your self-worth and like those values that you have. And so this could be like an upgrade. It could be like a shift in consciousness that occurs that allows you to show up with more self-worth, helps you to shift your values in some way, helps you to have a shift around your thinking around some kind of foundation in your life around material, your physical material possessions, as well as your financial security. It could shake that up, like not necessarily your foundations, but it could shake up your thinking. It could shift your thinking around your financial security. It could shift your thinking around your material possessions. It could shift your thinking around your self-worth and values. while you're purging these old patterns, while you're being reoriented. I mean, this full moon is definitely going to reorient the way you direct your energy. You know, it might be one of those full moons that illuminate something and, oh, I thought I was giving my energy to, this project or this relationship or this situation, but actually something new has been revealed. And now I need to give my energy over here. Now I need to direct my energy to this. Right. So it can kind of have that pivot energy of like, oh, you actually need to align your energy over here. The other thing that I want to mention about this full moon is that Mars is at 22 degrees of Sagittarius, and it's going to be squaring Saturn at 25 degrees of Sagittarius. So Mars is approaching in a square with Saturn and eventually Neptune. And what this can do is it can delay our actions. It kind of, this full moon kind of reminds me like there's a layer to it that reminds me of like, oop, we got to put on the brake because we have to reorient something. We have to redirect our energy in some way, and we have to address a foundational thing in our lives. We have to address the foundation, our boundaries, our system, um, our strategy. We have to pivot our energy in some way, and it creates a delay. We have to restructure something. We have to reschedule something. We have to build something, address something on a foundational level before we're able to move forward. And that's oftentimes what it feels like when there's Mars squaring Saturn. On a personal level, it's like I want to move forward with something, but I can't because I have to address this first, right? Um, and so that's something we could be feeling on a personal level. It could be like we have to pay attention to some details. We have to be discerning through some details. We have to bring order to something. We have to, um, you know, make some connections, chat with someone first, get some more information, learn something new. Um, it could be something like that on a personal level. However, collectively, when Mars squaring uh, Saturn, that could be an angry, critical energy in the air. That could be kind of loud, energetically speaking, and that could be, like violence, authorities, authority figures, violence, rage. It could be rage against the system. It could, there could be a lot of that vocalization around a system and, wanting to fight the system, fight the authority in some way, issues with authority in some way. Now, that's something happening more collectively, globally, versus you on a personal level. But I just want to point that out. Like, if you do feel that critical, grumpy, kind of angry, frustrating energy in the air, it might not be totally yours. You want to really be discerning about what you're feeling in the collective and what you're feeling for yourself personally. But definitely, this full moon brings up an energy release. The other thing I'm going to mention about this full moon is that Mercury is in conjunction with Chiron, the wounded healer, at 22 degrees in Aries. And so this is just like an awkwardness in our communication, a blind spot, where, we're either being strategic with our communication or we're struggling to assert ourselves as individuals. We're struggling with self-confidence. We're struggling with, yeah, asserting our personal needs. Um, and, either you kind of have to go in the corner and lick your wounds and go through a healing process, or you have to be kind of strategic and go through like more investigation, in the way you translate, learn, and get information and share information and speak, right? And so this in conjunction here is like a repression and like a blind spot in our communication. And essentially, it does bring healing into this full moon. It does bring a form of healing. And Jupiter is going to be squaring Chiron. It's also going to be trining Mars. So overall, this is supportive, for the way we direct our energies, directing our energies in a way that brings healing to us, in the way we assert ourselves and in our self-confidence, the way we move through obstacles. But, it requires us to maybe be more investigative, maybe more strategic, and explore and maybe go within, and reflect and do it in a way that feels safe for you. Mars is also in conjunction with Jupiter. So there's definitely something going on with the way we direct our energy and our emotional security. We might have to explore something and it feels like it's not safe, or we might not feel safe, and so we restrict ourselves around exploring something. This is where we need to really look at our emotional security, boundaries, how we embody something, how we translate something, being both discerning but also intuitive, paying attention to those details, but also integrating the larger perspective, and allowing this full moon to give you a nice purge or release so that you can realign your energy in a new direction, possibly something you haven't done before. But I do think it's pretty relational, this full moon, having it in Gemini. It feels like there's definitely a layer where it could be very socially active. There could be parties, chatting, getting to know people, networking, making important connections. Definitely a time where we can make very important fated connections at this time. But it does require us to heal our self-confidence. It does require us to be more strategic in our communication and the way we think and process things. It requires us to have more boundaries with our energy. And it does require that we restructure and possibly, slow down so that we can focus on our foundations first before we move forward. I would recommend, when I'm looking at a next step around this full moon, is to kind of work with the different, uh, the different sides of you. Gemini is like known for the twins, right? And so you might have one side of you that uh, sees something, translates something, wants to communicate something one way, wants to pursue something one way, wants to navigate your relationships one way. And then you might have a total opposite side of you that wants to think, process, communicate, navigate your relationships, and direct your energy in a totally different way. And this is about being aware of the light side of you and the shadow side of you, the side of you that thinks one way and the side of you that thinks a totally different way. And can you be aware of both of those sides of you? And can you go through an integration process around that? Can you somehow integrate that and direct your energy in a way that is more compassionate, that is more intuitive, that is more boundaried, that is more mature, that is more structured, that is more compassionate and emotionally secure and sensitive at the same time. If you would do me a favor, if you enjoy this and you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and hit the notification bell so that you get notified anytime I upload an intuitive message, an energy update, any other insightful spiritual things that I want to talk about. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, please follow the podcast and give this podcast a 5-star rating. And that's like giving me a big psychic hug and help support this offering to you. And if you need support, whether it's around this full moon or it's around something you're going through, whether you need relief, a healing, you need some clarity, an intuitive reading, you are navigating some difficulties in your life and would like an astrology reading, you want to tap into your soul's blueprint in your natal chart, or you want to give yourself a birthday gift and a solar return reading, or you just want to dive deeper into the transits and how they're going to impact you. You can find more information about how to work with me below. It was so good connecting with you. I wish you all the very best. Take care during this full moon.